What is going on, guys? Welcome back. It is your boy Nick. Shocktober is over, and in about 3 hours, Goblin Party is on. Season 5 Clash Royale is in the building. But guess what? It comes with a lot of bad news. We're getting huge nerfs. The meta is just gonna completely change. Some of these things are absolutely just card killers. Some of them are reasonable. And out of all of them, we only have one buff, and that is all. Starting off, the Witch. The Witch got a huge buff last season. And as a Witch user, I absolutely loved it. It was absolutely ridiculous what they did to the card. And this is a reasonable, definitely, it is not reasonable. It is a deserved nerf. But, however, I do think they went a little bit too far with this one. Now, looking at the Witch, they have a speed attack reduction from 1.4 to 1.7 seconds. That is just absolutely brutal for the Witch. They completely took out the splash damage from the Witch. It only targets a single unit, which really doesn't matter that much because they reduced the splash damage so much in last season that it was pretty much almost non-existent. So them taking it away completely doesn't really matter at all anyways. And this is the big one right here. The initial spawn of the skeletons was reduced from 1 second to 3.5. You are no longer going to be able to drop a Witch in the last moment to stop a charging Prince or Dark Prince or Battle Ram or whatever it is, or a Bandit. It is absolutely a killer. She is going to be on her own. I definitely see the Witch getting kicked out of a lot of decks right now, especially since she pretty much almost has no defensive capabilities. Like, it's basically you're getting a Musketeer that costs an extra elixir. I personally, even though I love the Witch and it's one of my favorite cards, I would rather put a Musketeer and the Skeletons into my deck because I would at least be able to rotate cards a little bit faster. I don't know, that's my personal opinion. I wanna see what you guys think about that one. But I definitely, I really think that they might buff the Witch a little bit sooner or later. Just because I do really think that this is going to be a killer for this card. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this one. Cause yeah, that's painful. The Elixir Golem, I think they got a decent, reasonable nerf on this one. They went conservative with this one. They only reduced the hit health of all forms of the Elixir Golem. So the Elixir Golem, the Golemites, and the Blobs by 10%. Which is reasonable. I think the card was a little bit too strong for what it was worth. Yeah, you spent 3 elixir, but you're also giving your opponent 4, so that was kind of the trade-off. But I think they just missed the mark just by a hair. So I think this was definitely reasonable. I think that's really not too much of a big game changer. I think a lot of players are going to still keep the Elixir Golem in their decks. And it doesn't really change the strategic advantage of the card, so definitely cool. Wall Breakers getting a massive nerf, which I think everybody saw coming because they just got a ridiculous buff. 90% damage buff, so definitely painful for that one. But also a reduction in damage radius from 2 to 1.5 tiles, which really didn't matter that much because the amount of times that, let's say, a unit was within the radius of the Wall Breakers when they popped at the tower, it really didn't really happen that often. So I don't think that was too much of a bug. The 90% damage definitely hurts a lot. The radius not so much. I think they just kind of reduced the radius just from the 2 to 1.5 tiles. Just because there was just, I think, just some instances, some replays that they probably watched where it's just like, yeah, that card really should not have died from an explosion that big, or that small, I guess. So they just kind of kept to the realism of the game, I guess. Baby Dragon, this one, it really is... I guess this you would call this a personal nerf for me because Baby Dragon, when I first played the game in 2016, Baby Dragon was my card. I absolutely loved it. They're reducing the health of the card by 4.5%, which I think it technically really is reasonable because a lot of like being a flyer, you really shouldn't have too much defensive capabilities, but the fact that it had so much health and a flyer, it was such a great defensive card, not only offensive, that I think that I just had a little bit of an OP to it. So the 4.5% health nerf was definitely reasonable. Let me know what you guys think about that one. I'm kind of up in the air with that one, but I totally approve this one, even though it's one of my favorite cards. I'm cool with it. Like no hard feelings whatsoever. I'd definitely take that one. Fisherman, huge strategic changes to it. They're going from a 7 to 6 tile radius on the hook, and as well as an increase in terms of from 1 to 1.1 second charge time on the hook. So it'll make it a lot harder for players to hook a golem or a hog to attack the king tower or anything like that. No damage or health nerfs or anything like that. It just strictly towards the hook ability of the card, which I guess speaks volumes since it is a legendary, and that's pretty much why we get legendaries, is for those bonus perks. I've never been really a fisherman user, so it doesn't really affect my type of play, but I know a lot of I see the fisherman really leaving a lot of decks in this one. This is a tough one. This is a tough one because it's literally strictly about the perk of the card and nothing towards the stats of the card, which is difficult to talk about, just because it really comes towards the play style of the actual player, not the card itself. There's cards out there that are horrible for some play styles and are great for others. This one I think is going to be a very niche nerf on this one, but I do think you're going to start seeing a lot of players abandoning Fisherman very, very soon. Executioner, it's kind of difficult on this one. This one is not a buff, it's not a nerf, it's a burf or a narf. It is getting a 4.5 to 5 tile increase on its range. So it was at 4.5, it is now at 5. This just kind of helps a lot with, I guess, when you have, let's say, 2 archers or 2 units that are pretty close together. One gets hit with the axe, some don't. I've used the executioner in some of my decks, and I've faced it a lot, and yeah, I do think it should have increased it by that half a tile, just because sometimes you just see the axe going towards the unit, but then it just doesn't make it, and it kind of looks like on screen that it hits it, but it doesn't really do any damage. So I think this one's justified completely, but it does, and here's the huge one, and this is where it's just gonna throw the card up in the air and we're gonna see where it lands. I'm super curious about this one, but it is getting a radius reduction of 20%, and I personally think that it is justified, just because sometimes where it's just like, you look at this and it's like, with a 4.5 tile range and such a huge radius, like, it just annihilates any kind of swarm, any kind of spawner deck. Skarmy is just goner. Any goblins, skeletons, witch is a goner. And especially like if you get into the perfect range, like musketeer, like it just does so much damage. And I'm okay with the damage part of it, but it's just you're doing so much damage and you're just splash unit as well, which is a killer. And the third nerf, barf, whatever you want to call it, is the hang time. As we know, as I hope everybody knows about this one now, but as the executioner throwing the axe if you get it at a perfect distance from yourself, you can do a whole hell of a lot of damage. And with the hang time being increased from 1 second to 1.2 seconds, this is kind of like an indirect, like Lava Hound, Lava Hound nerf, just because as it's hanging there a little bit longer, once the Lava Hound dies, and this only happens when it dies, if you can get rid of the executioner before that, is it takes a little bit of time for the lava pups to spawn, but because the hang time of the axe is a little bit longer now, you throw the axe, do the damage to the Lava Hound, the lava pups pop, and then the axe comes back and takes care of like 2 of those pups. Very, very, very unique situation on that one, but definitely see a little bit, tiny bit of a strategic change in terms of how the execution is going to be used. You can't just throw it on the field now and just let it take care of its business. It's going to be a little more sniper rifle type of maneuver to it, where you have to throw it in specific moments, which is reasonable. Like, it is a strategic game, so you shouldn't have a card where you just throw it on the field and no matter what the situation is, it's great for it. There should be weaknesses and strengths to it, and I think the executioner really didn't have too many weaknesses compared to all the strengths and bonuses that it had. Now, the only buff that we have with this new season is the Barbarian Barrel, 8% damage increase, which I think is reasonable, because it's been it doesn't really do too much damage in terms of when you throw the barrel, but it does have a unit spawn to it. And I think everyone really compares the bar barrel to the log. And I guess the trade-off would be the log has a much wider radius, so you can take care of more of the field, more spawn units or more squishier units are completely taken care of. But with the bar barrel, you have a much smaller radius, but at least you get a unit out of it, which is kind of the trade-off, and it really comes towards the playstyle, or I guess the meta as well, if there's a lot of spawner decks out there at that point. So this is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to keep my eye on this one, because I really want to see what's going to happen to the log. Are people going to start abandoning the log towards the bar barrel for more damage, or is the log still going to stay on top for now as the weapon of choice? Let me know what you think about this one. I'm definitely so curious about this one, because I've used the log, I've used the bar barrel, and I've faced it so many times, and I'm just completely torn on this one. I personally don't know what I'm gonna do. I know some of the decks that I use do have log on it, but that's the one thing that always kind of like hurt, is that you throw the log, you spend those elixir, but you're not really doing damage, and it's very unique situational. Like, you want to keep that card in your hand until you have a whole bunch of units. But then there's just some decks that you're just playing where it's just super heavy, where it's like P.E.K.K.A, Mega Knight, or lots of flyers, and it kind of like becomes like, I've had some games where it just becomes a useless card, just because it just like, you cannot use this card against this player. So definitely curious about that one. Let me know what you guys think about this this season, because I definitely think the meta is going to change big time on this one, especially with the Witch and the Executioner. I definitely see a lot of decks that are focused on those 2 cards disappearing, or at least tweaking a lot. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the content, and if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the very next video. Thanks for watching.